Today we're going to deal with autopsy87, and he is a great example of an atheist, a Western atheist, who is swimming, breathing the air of Western Christian values. This civilization is based off of the Western world, Europe, but specifically, especially the United States. He's swimming in this pool, but is trying to deny the water that he's in. And that is what we deal with a lot. He's trying to affirm a lot of the values that Christianity has bequeathed to him, yet denies the foundation on which he is standing. So here, he's going to try to refute PragerU University, who talks about how you cannot have morality without God, which is absolutely correct. And what, of course, Prager is talking about, and what Christian philosophers and atheist philosophers talk about, is objective morality. And you're going to say how you disagree with that at the end, and we're going to deal with that. And that's game over. Once you deny objective morality, it's over. Game over. It's to debate about morality but not affirm objective morality is as silly as debating about this orange but saying the orange doesn't exist. This is just kind of the idea that I have in my mind that I've made up. So to say, well, why? Let's debate about this orange here, but I don't believe there's an objective orange out there. I'm just going to say what I believe from these what I think about it. So anyway, here we go. He's going to critique Dennis Prager.
Basically, an atheist cannot account for morality. We're going back to atheism 1.0. The shit we thought we were done with, we're right back in it, folks.
You were never done with it. Yeah, we ally on a lot of stuff. I will ally with a libertarian atheist who affirms, the libertarian principles of government, and I believe that the United States should be governed by Christian moral values and principles, and as we leave those, what you're going to find, what you're going to see, is the destruction of our civilization, which is what is happening right now with social justice warriors, with Islam coming in. When a society begins to abandon Christian principles, it's going to begin to implode or become very tyrannical. Biblical Christian principles. Once it does that, it's going to begin to implode, and that's what we're seeing here. When you begin to, it's just math, okay? When your society aborts millions upon millions of babies, when your society downplays the value of marriage and the importance of marriage, a man and a wife, and it begins to say that divorce is an okay thing, it's very acceptable and should be done, actually, it should be encouraged in many things, or just cohabitating, you're going to first off, you're going to wipe out a lot of people from that civilization. Then you're going to raise up kids that are going to be very traumatized and very untrusting, and they're not going to have kids themselves and sit in their basement and be on the internet all day, which is what we're having as well. And what that civilization is going to have to do is either get wiped out or, just cease to exist because of simple demographic trends. If two parents have one kid and then those two just keep going down after 3 or 4, 5, 6 generations, that civilization will be depopulated straight up. Or they're going to have to import people from another civilization, and that is what the West is doing right now. In Europe, they're importing from Islamic countries and other countries as well, but a lot of Islamic countries. And how's that working out for them, huh? And what we're doing here in the United States is importing from the Latin American countries who are more socialistic in their views, which is why we're having an uptick with the social justice warriors and their Marxism. They're finding an ally with the Hispanics coming up from the South. Okay, so this debate we're not back to that. You didn't win the debate. I mean, you just kind of shouted a lot of Christians down, and a lot of Christians don't like to be rude or whatnot, but and we don't like to engage in that. I do will be harsh at times, and so this was never over. Let's keep going here.
Do you believe that good and evil exist? The answer to this question separates Judeo-Christian values from secular values.
Oh God, stop. Good and evil are descriptions on actions or ideas. It's amazing how simple the thinking is of these people. And no, this is not what separates Judeo-Christian values from secular values. Because even in the Judeo-Christian world, those people are not going to always agree with each other on what is good and what is evil.
Okay, you're right. Although there's a general trend, I'd say, even amongst Catholics, Eastern Orthodox, and most Bible-believing Protestants on what good and evil is, there is differences between the groups. There's more theological differences than there is moral. If you look at all three big streams, branches of Christianity, will have differences, but we all agree there's an objective standard which you cannot affirm. As an atheist, you can't affirm it. So let's keep moving on here.
This is the whole thing that I have a problem with about morality being based on the Bible or morality being based on religion, especially coming from these people who are on the right. It amazes me that they're right about the anti-authoritarian aspect of their political beliefs, but yet they think that everything that is deemed good or bad comes from an authority. It is an authority that tells you what is good, what is bad, what is moral, and what is not. That is so opposite of what their political leanings are. But
yes, why is that, autopsy87? What you're experiencing right now, autopsy87, in the Western world is the culmination of centuries of debate between Christians. For 1,600 years, the Western world, since the Roman Empire converted, has been Christian. The foundation, the moral foundations on which the whole Western civilization has been based off of has been Christianity and the Bible. So as the church dealt with and engaged the Bible, and there was debates, there were differences, especially on aspects of authority when you get to the Reformation, and that's really what birthed the United States ultimately was the Reformation. This is an internal debate that is going on for centuries. And when you come to the United States, this is why the early founders, how many of the early founders were atheists? Maybe Thomas Paine, you could argue, was an atheist. Not very many. How many? I guarantee you, 90+% of the founders were Christians. The United States is founded upon principles of liberty because of what they saw going on in Europe and the authoritarian state that was smashing Christianity, what they perceived to be true biblical Christianity. That was a big reason why the First Amendment was put into the Constitution, of freedom of religion and freedom of thought and freedom of speech. And what they believed was that God wanted that. God wanted freedom of religion based off of what they believed, the earliest founders believed, was that the people had to embrace from their own free will Christian morality for this experiment to work. That's what they believed. And what they didn't believe, though, was to force a theology on people, to force them to believe a theology, but they did believe that, of course, undergirding Christian morality would be a Christian theology, and people had to freely choose that for it to work. You couldn't smash people with Christian theology and tell them they had to believe it in order to have a Christian civilization. That's why they're so putting checks and balances. Oh, by the way, you know what else they also believed in? The sinfulness of human beings, that were inherently sinful. And so they put a lot of checks and balances because they knew once you had one person in power, problems are coming down the line. What we're in right now, autopsy87, is an experiment done by Christians, founded, the vast majority were Christians. Yes, Thomas Jefferson, not so much. George Washington was. But the vast majority of the early founders of the United States were Christians trying to debate other Christians who were authoritarians, and they saw principles of liberty, and they went back to the scriptures, finding where Jesus says, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar, to God the things that are God, separation, distinction between church and state, if you want to say it like that. That's what we're in right now. So anyway.
Shows that they believe in that authority. Ask these people, is something good because God says it's good, and is something bad because God says it's bad? I guarantee you Prager would say God determines what is moral, what is good. And that is not morality, asshole. That is obedience to authority.
This is bizarre to me why he says this. This is very strange to me. If there is a deity, an almighty, omniscient, omnipresent deity that created us, that's outside the space-time universe, that is the one who made us, then obviously he would be an authority on what we should do and how we should live. Don't you think? And how do you're saying that's not morality, it's a submission to authority? What? If this deity says, I am the authority on all things that occur in this universe, he is the authority. That's the bottom line in everything. So if he says in laws of nature, he's the authority. He says how it works. He says how it's going to go. And morality, he's the one who would know how the human machine would work best. And that's what he's telling us in the Bible. The Bible claims that. Now you're talking about an authority. Yes. Who's your authority, Autopsy87? Me. Fine. You want to have your own or make society authority? I don't think you're not a collectivist. I'm certain about that watching your videos. You're more of an individualist. So you decide. So you're the authority. We go to you for moral authority. You have to find authority on morality somewhere. It's got to be somewhere. It just doesn't pop into existence in the ether. You have to, and so what I'm assuming you're saying is that you're the authority for yourself on it. I don't accept your authority on morality. And yes, God can be an authority. Now, if I am an average citizen who's just driving around and I see you, Autopsy, you're driving above the speed limit, and I go, woo, and I pop my head out the window and go, woo, 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 and then I yell as if I'm a police officer, and then I get out and I begin to write you a ticket on a notepad and say, oh, you got a ticket. What would you say? You'd rip up the ticket. Get out of my face. But if I'm a police officer and I do it, then I have the authority to do it. Okay? So yes, even you in your own would accept that having a police officer as your authority, you've placed that authority in him. We as a society have placed our authority in police officers to do that. So he's an authority to do it. I am not. God's the authority on morality. We are not. And once you get rid of God as an overarching transcendent authority on morality, the game is over for objective morality. There is no such thing as objective morality, and that's what Prager is talking about. Let's move on here.
Let me offer the clearest possible example. Murder. Is murder wrong? Is it evil? Nearly everyone would answer yes, but now I will pose a much harder question. How do you know?
It amazes me that the guy that is about to lecture us on how an atheist can account for morality, why is murder wrong if there's no God, is the same guy who believes in a God that supposedly drowned everyone on the fucking planet.
God's a big meanie. Yeah.
The same guy who believes in a God that sent a fucking angel of death to murder all the firstborn of
that mean God. He just all those innocent Egyptians
is immoral, and how we can't account for that being immoral because we don't believe in his God.
You can't account for it being objective morally wrong.
The same God who ordered people throughout the entire Old Testament to slaughter and pillage and fucking destroy goddamn everything. This guy believes those stories. This guy believes that God exists. That same God who came to Moses in Leviticus 25 verses 44 through 46 and said, you can own children as slaves and pass them on to your descendants. This is the guy lecturing us on morality, saying that the only basis we can have for that morality is through Scripture and through believing in his God.
Okay. Autopsy87 seems pretty upset about what God said in the Old Testament. He thinks the same, that it's immoral. Autopsy87, based off what? Whose authority? Yours? Western society? The group collective of what we deem today as right and wrong? Who decided that all that's wrong, Autopsy87? Who decides that? You? Me? Society in general? Who? Somewhere you're going to have an authority. You got to have an authority. You don't like the Old Testament commandments that you just spoke of there. What God had told the Israelites to do. Interesting. Keep that in mind. Let's keep going on here.
Or you think murder is wrong, but how do you know?
See, here's the difference between a guy like me and a guy like Dennis Prager, is I'm not entirely sold on the concept of objective morality. I think...
Game over. You're out of the game. Get out of the game, Autopsy87. You're someone who's trying to say how all these football teams stink and how that team stinks, but you don't want to get in the game and play. You don't want to stand on anything. Oh, I'm just this person I'm not so sure on objective morality. Then what is the point about arguing it? Why are you so mad? I don't get it. If there's no orange, there's no objective orange, why are we arguing about what the orange looks like and what it should look like? You're going to talk about all this stuff about how, God is this evil God and all this, and you're all mad. Why? You don't even believe in objective morality. The game is over. Game over. You lose. This is why, in the long run, you and the social justice warriors, libertarian secularists like yourself, and the social justice warriors it will just become a screaming match. That's all it will be. Who can shout each other down better? That's all it will become. Because neither of you are standing on objective morality. Neither of you can say, thou shalt not murder. And the reason why you're going to say, oh, God commands not to murder, but then he commands Moses to kill people that worship the golden calf. Murder means the killing of someone who is innocent. Those people are not innocent. Okay? And why is it that we don't follow? You're going to say, oh, just read the Bible, read the Bible, read the Bible. Just read Leviticus, one book. Just read that one book, Leviticus. I have read Leviticus, Autopsy87, many times, probably 100 plus times. And I still think the Bible is divine and inspired by God. Am I immoral or am I stupid? No, I think you're the one who's ignorant of what the Bible actually teaches and why Christians don't follow Old Testament civil law. Okay, this is something that Jacqueline Glenn brought up in her critique of how Islam and Christianity is the same, and you're going to say the same thing. You're basically arguing just like Muslims do. That's what Sam Harris argues with William Lane Craig. You're arguing just like Muslims would or Hindus would. No. There's different groups, and you need to make distinction. Why we as Christians follow the way we do. Now, obviously you probably know we follow a guy named Jesus Christ, and we believe he fulfilled the law. And we follow the New Testament. We follow the Old Testament in light of the New Testament revelation. Okay? And there was a purpose. Do you know what that purpose was for those Old Testament commandments? Why God is telling the Israelites to kill people when they do break his law? Why over and over again? Do you remember the story of the woman caught in the act of adultery? How she, what did Jesus say when they were going to stone her? Following the Old Testament law. He who is without sin, let him cast the first stone. The purpose of the Old Testament law was to show that we all should die. That's the point of Romans chapter 1, of John chapter 8. But you don't care about that, do you? And there's a lot more. When the Catholic Church, the Pope Urban, commanded, or he called for the Crusades, okay, in the 11th century, why didn't he quote Joshua or Deuteronomy? Go into the promised land and slaughter all those Canaanites and just put the Muslims as Canaanites. Why didn't he do that? Do you know why, Autopsy87? No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't care. You don't care about the reasons why Christians do the things the way they do or anything. And you say, read the New Testament. Autopsy87, you are swimming in the debate between Christians. The moral atmosphere you're living in is from that whole wave from reaction to the revelation of the New Testament, Jesus Christ and the apostles. You're living in, you go anywhere where Christianity is not the dominant worldview. You go into atheist nation, head out to atheist countries. Go into any atheist countries that has state atheism or, that's the predominant view. Go ahead. Go to Muslim countries. Go anywhere where Christianity is not the dominant view. Guess what you're going to find? Darkness, not fun. Okay? You can't even see it, man. All your pontificating about morality that I agree with on a lot of things. Okay, against social justice warriors in Islam, I agree with you on a lot of things. The very urges that you have come from centuries of internal Christian debate within the Western world that you grew up with hearing about. That's why a lot of the moral foundations on which we stand, you are standing on them as well. Okay, so please, Autopsy87, please educate yourself and learn about biblical Christianity and why we accept the things we do. And if God is authority, there's so much more here that I could say, but I'm going to stop here. All right, God bless.